Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are digging into a mystery that has stumped scientists for decades. The really complex and, frankly, confusing relationship between bipolar disorder and the human brain. I mean, we have this incredible technology that lets us see right inside our own skulls, so why on earth don't we have a simple brain scan to diagnose it? All right, let's get into it.
We're going to start with this incredibly candid quote from Dr. Thomas Hajek, who's the author of the research we're exploring. This guy is an expert in brain imaging, and even he admits that the tech just hasn't delivered on its early promise. Right away, that sets up a pretty fascinating puzzle for us to solve.
And really, this is the central question we're tackling. With all the amazing power of modern MRIs, why can't we just point to a scan and say, yep, that's a bipolar brain? The answer, as you're about to see, is way more interesting than you might think.
Okay, so to crack this case, first we've got to understand the real-world limits of our high-tech tools. Because the data is, well, it's both impressive and, when you get right down to it, surprisingly weak for clinical use.
So get this. You can take thousands of brain scans, feed them into these super advanced machine learning algorithms, and the absolute best they can do at telling a bipolar brain from a healthy one is just over 65% accurate. Now, on the surface, that sounds okay, right?
But here's the reality check. For a medical test to be genuinely useful in a clinic, you need it to be accurate around 80% of the time. So at 65%, you're not much better off than just flipping a coin. There's just way too much overlap between the two groups. It is not reliable enough for a doctor to use for a diagnosis. So what is going on here?
Well, the number one suspect in our investigation is this flawed idea that has guided research for years: the hunt for the mythical average patient. It's this belief that somewhere out there there's a single one-size-fits-all brain signature for bipolar disorder.
And this slide just perfectly lays out the problem. Let's take the amygdala, a key emotional center of the brain. For years, you had studies coming out saying it was larger in people with bipolar disorder. Then another batch of studies would come out saying, nope, actually, it's smaller. Some even found no difference at all. They were all looking at people with the same diagnosis, but were getting completely opposite results. So here's the critical part. When you do a big meta-analysis and you average all of those contradictory findings together, what happens? The larger findings and the smaller findings, they just cancel each other out. And the grand scientific conclusion becomes zero difference. This whole approach of averaging was literally erasing the real story and hiding the important differences between people.
And this realization led to a massive shift in thinking. If averaging everything together is the problem, then maybe the solution is to, stop ignoring the differences and actually study them. This is where the idea of heterogeneity becomes so important. The differences aren't just annoying noise. They're the actual data we need to be looking at.
So instead of a single cause, what we're really looking at is a unique recipe of factors that shapes each person's brain. Think of these as the clues we need to follow. You've got the underlying genetic risk someone is born with. You've got the cumulative impact of the illness itself over time. You've got other health conditions happening at the same time, what scientists call comorbidities. And crucially, you have the effects of treatments. Let's start with our first clue. Genetics. When researchers looked at the close relatives of people with bipolar disorder, so people with a high genetic risk but who don't have the illness, they found something pretty amazing. They consistently have a larger volume in a brain area called the right inferior frontal gyrus. But here's the twist. In patients who've had the illness for a long time, that exact same region is consistently found to be smaller. This tells us we're looking at a dynamic process that changes over time, not some fixed, unchanging trait. Now for our second clue, and this one might be a surprise. It's obesity. The rate of obesity in people with bipolar disorder is just staggeringly high. We're talking up to 2/3 of all individuals. That's nearly 3 times the rate in the general population. And it turns out this isn't some separate issue. It leaves a direct fingerprint on the brain.
And here is the jaw-dropping connection. One of the most consistently found brain changes in bipolar disorder research is something called ventriculomegaly, basically enlarged fluid-filled spaces in the brain. But what this new research shows is that obesity by itself can explain up to 47% of that enlargement. A massive piece of the puzzle was hiding in plain sight, in a co-occurring condition that researchers often just ignored.
All right, our final clue is maybe the most powerful of all, because it shows how the brain isn't just a passive victim of the illness. It can actually be protected and even changed for the better by the right treatment. Honestly, this slide is just incredible.
It's showing the size of the hippocampus. So, as you might expect, patients who are not taking lithium have smaller hippocampi than healthy people. But look over at the patients on lithium. Their hippocampi aren't just normal, they are significantly larger than even the healthy control groups. It's like lithium has this powerful, protective, maybe even regenerative effect on the brain.
And what's absolutely wild is that this brain-preserving effect happens whether or not the lithium is actually successful at stopping the person's mood episodes. This suggests that lithium isn't just working by making people feel better. It seems to be having a direct, biological protective impact on the very structure of the brain itself.
So we've gathered our clues: genetics, the burden of the illness, obesity, and treatment. When we put it all together, what does this new picture look like? Well, it fundamentally changes how we ought to be thinking about this illness.
And we come full circle, back to Dr. Hajak's central point. The solution to this whole mystery wasn't about finding the perfect average patient. It was about embracing the differences. That heterogeneity, the unique story of each and every person, that's not the problem. That's the key.
So what this really means is that a person's brain structure isn't set in stone. It's much better to think of it as the outcome of a constant tug of war. On one side, you have these damaging or neuroprogressive factors like the illness itself, or comorbidities like obesity. And on the other side, you have neuroprotective factors like the incredibly powerful effects of lithium.
And this leaves us with a really profound and, I think, hopeful question for the future of mental health care. This whole new way of understanding the brain in bipolar disorder, it really moves the goalposts. It suggests that treatment shouldn't just be about managing today's symptoms, but about actively protecting and preserving the brain for the long haul. It reframes mental health care as, well, brain care, a proactive fight to tip that balance toward protection and resilience.